G'day, I'm Sam, and Chloe, Jana, Cameron and myself will be exploring South Park for our critical analysis presentation. Our collective passion for South Park made it easy for us to formulate our opinion on it and critically analyse it through the context of central issues within the course. We believe that South Park, unlike other animated sitcoms, is a critical platform society can use to self-reflect and create a better world. Over the course of the presentation, we will explain in greater detail how we arrived at this contention. But first, let's look at a quote from Michael W. DeLashmut and Brannon Hancock from their chapter in Taking South Park Seriously in 2009. As the show's confrontational use of irreverent language and themes places the viewer outside the realm of appropriateness, the viewer is forced to engage in critical self-reflection. It offers viewers both a call to critical reflection on one's complicit immersion in popular social and political life, as well as the admonition to change one's behaviour and pursue a more authentic being in the world. DeLashmut and Hancock are explaining that South Park's inappropriate themes make the viewer question their own beliefs and actions because those same themes often expose their beliefs or actions in a light that reveals how ridiculous they are. And when people understand how ridiculous their own behaviour is, they may change their behaviour and become a more authentic or well-grounded person. But before we get into more on that topic, let's look at the outline of today's presentation.
So, first we will explore the background of South Park, how it got to where it is today, and why it has become so popular all over the world. Then, after covering some more general info, we'll discuss the genre it falls into and how it's distributed. Following that, we'll quickly talk about the audience and the creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Next, we'll look at the characters and setting of South Park and what separates it from other shows. After that, we'll discuss the show in relation to the broadcast to the nation and post-broadcast fragmentation areas of the course. And lastly, we'll finish off with an episode breakdown featuring a 2-minute extract and in-depth shot analysis. But before we get into all that, we would like to show you this. This is what appears on the screen at the start of every episode of South Park, immediately letting audiences know that this is a controversial program. The first 2 sentences are disclaimers that all characters and events are fictional and that celebrity impersonations are done poorly on purpose. But what is most fascinating is the last sentence. The quote, "Due to its content, it should not be viewed by anyone," immediately makes audiences expect to watch something that's going to be pretty controversial and confronting. It's also a small dig at the political correctness culture from the show's creators. But what we find funny is that we're contending that more people should watch it. We're saying that this is a show that should be watched by everyone, except young kids.
Despite the fact it's definitely not a show for young kids, South Park's main characters are for young kids. These young kids encounter various and usually pretty outrageous situations in and around the fictional small town of South Park. The show is famous for its willingness to say what you're not supposed to say. It's not afraid to tackle any issue, and they often tackle these issues in extreme and outrageous ways. For example, it tackled immigration in an episode where mutated humans return to the 21st century from a dystopian future. This fearlessness has landed the show in hot water countless times in its 23 years. Although it has been in trouble so many times, it still remains one of the most popular and successful shows on television. Then again, it's the history of controversies that likely draw in a lot of viewers. It has also been praised for constantly having its finger on the pulse and understanding what's been recently happening in society. We'll get into how it's able to do this later in the presentation. Along with its fearlessness when discussing any issue, the show is also admired for being the devil's advocate on both sides of debates. South Park never really takes sides on specific issues. It actively ridicules both sides of the spectrum. As Robert Arp said in his book, South Park and Philosophy, I learned something today. Unafraid to lampoon the extremist fanatics associated with any social, political, ethical and religious views, South Park is the most important series on TV. Before we get into more about how South Park is the most important series on TV, let's have a quick look at some general info on the show.
South Park's first episode was released in 1997, titled Cartman Gets an Anal Probe. Clearly, their crude nature has been present since its inception. The average runtime for an episode is about 22 minutes. 23 complete seasons with a total of 308 episodes have been released so far, and episode 1 of season 24 premiered a couple of weeks ago. Last year, the show was renewed through to at least season 26 by Comedy Central. It has been nominated for countless awards in its 23-year journey, including 16 Emmy nominations for Outstanding Animated Program, which it won 4 times. Fun fact, the extract we will be showing later is from an episode that won the Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program in 2013. It's also received a Peabody Award for its stringent social commentary and undeniably fearless lampooning of all that is self-important and hypocritical in American life. The fact that the show has received awards for fearless lampooning of self-important and hypocritical culture really helps support our belief that the show really is important to help people become more socially, politically, religiously, and ethically aware.
In terms of genre, South Park falls under the genre of animated sitcom, and it has a rating of MA, so clearly it's not a children's animated sitcom like The Simpsons or SpongeBob. We're going to call it an adult animated sitcom. According to Robert Urban, animated sitcoms often dissect sensitive social and political concerns using negative humour, exaggeration, and stereotyping. However, we believe South Park is able to do this in a positive way. Although definitions of genres are constantly changing, Middle argues that even if we cannot provide an essential definition of a genre's core identity, we all still know a sitcom when we see one.
Because the show is distributed on Comedy Central, it's safe to assume the show's audience is 18 to 34-year-old males, but it's hard to narrow down much more than that. It's hard to define because of the different directions the creators take in the show. We can assume through its content that libertarian, anti-partisan, or bipartisan people would enjoy South Park more than most. These specific demographics are reflected through the other shows on Comedy Central.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone. The two met at the University of Colorado, and in 1992 they made a paper animation cartoon called Jesus vs. Frosty. This led to the now infamous animated Christmas card, The Spirit of Christmas, in 1995. They have both written, directed, and helped edit every single episode of South Park. The two have also made quite a few films, including Team America in 2004. Their views are not aligned with specific groups, and that's reflected by the show's attempts to lampoon anyone they feel like, no matter what side of the debate they sit on. In the past, they have described themselves as libertarian, and because they're so well known, they've been right at the centre of every single controversy the show has faced.
Trey and Matt's mission to insult both sides of whatever issue is summed up perfectly in this quote from Trey. We find just as many things to rip on the left as we do on the right. People on the far left and the far right are the same exact person to us. It's this kind of thinking that leads us to believe that South Park is an extremely important medium in the sense that it can help all people self-reflect and criticise themselves and evoke change for the better in their lives and in society in general. What allows the creators to rip on all walks of society boils down to two main facets of the show. We'll look at these now.
The first key component of South Park's social commentary is their characters. Over the years, the show has featured literally hundreds of characters, with most of them being voiced by Trey or Matt. No celebrity, politician, or religious figure is safe from an appearance on South Park. Even the Muslim prophet Muhammad, which caused massive controversy in 2010. The episode that featured Muhammad is now cut from circulation due to the backlash it received. Many public figures have been ridiculed over the years, and some even view their portrayals as a compliment, no matter how bad they are made to look.
Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny, the full-grade fourth graders at South Park Elementary, have been the main characters since the show started, and they've often been at the heart of some of the biggest issues South Park has lampooned. The fact that they are children makes way for a very important dynamic of the show's comedy and effectiveness. The kids are often heard swearing and saying some quite offensive things, which in part adds to the comedy. But most importantly, they are often portrayed as having more awareness and observance than the adult characters. This awareness and observance not only creates comedic effect, but also adds to the sense of self-reflexiveness the show tries to construct. If kids can see how stupid some of these things are, why can't we, the adults?
Adult characters in the show are rarely used as the voice of reason. Most of them sit heavily on one side of debates or the other, and that sets up a lot of material the show tackles. In recent years, Stan's dad Randy has become one of the central characters to the show. The character is lovable for a variety of reasons, but his efforts to jump on the bandwagon of any social or political movement is definitely one of his most iconic traits. All these characters help create the most important way the show evokes its self-reflexive platform. The setting. The town of South Park is so important because it allows the writers to strip away limitations that a real town might have. Although loosely based on the mountain town of Fairplay, Colorado, it is definitely fictitious, and when a story takes place in a fictitious town, the creators are able to mould that town into whatever the story calls for. Some other examples of this are The Simpsons' Springfield and Parks and Recreation's Pawnee. Since they don't exist in actual reality, they can be used as a mirror to our own reality. They're used as a vehicle to communicate satirical topics and controversial ideas to the audience. In the fictitious town of South Park, the audience can identify their own world and even their own existence. This allows satire to grow, and we again come back to the ability for the show to make us question our own actions, values, and beliefs. You may be asking, but many animated sitcoms have used these techniques with characters and settings in the past. But the clever way in which the creators use these techniques is what separates South Park from other animated sitcoms. The South Park universe includes some utterly ridiculous and unbelievable characters like Hanky the Christmas Pooh and Satan. The setting has also hosted all kinds of extraordinary and silly scenarios like genuine witch hunts and homeless people mass invasions. This may make the show seem like it's not centered in reality, but in fact it is more centered in reality than any show on television. This is because nothing is off limits for South Park and its creators. It's the most real setting because there is nothing it won't explore within society. If other media tries to shelter its viewers from certain things, South Park will make a conscious effort to expose and satirize those things. And when nothing's off limits, nobody is safe from getting offended and then potentially being forced to question their own beliefs.
It doesn't matter if those beliefs are social, ethical, economical, political, or religious. South Park will find a funny way to use them and make viewers realise how ridiculous some of their opinions are. The show's satire is done so well because no single demographic has become the constant butt of the joke. The creators don't sit on either side of the argument. They believe all sides are wrong and the argument is pointless. Parker and Stone's efforts to satirise both sides of the divide definitely plays a major role in grounding the show in reality, but something else that helps keeps that sense of reality is its week-to-week creation and release. Unlike most shows on television except the news, South Park episodes are made on a week-to-week basis, meaning a new episode will air on Wednesday night, then from Thursday to Wednesday morning the creators will be producing the next episode ready to air at 10 p.m. This method allows the show's creators to keep up to date on recent happenings in the world, and it becomes far easier to comment on them. This not only makes it more funny for audiences, but it also makes the town and characters of South Park seem more authentic. It's a key facet of creating the self-reflexive culture we speak of. From season 21 and onwards, the show has kept a lightly serialised format which audiences appreciate, mainly because episodes can still be watched as a one-off, but there are also ways that they reward fans who watch every episode, mainly through recurring jokes. Without the week-to-week creation and just lightly serialised format, our contention could no longer apply to South Park. It needs to be able to shift and comment on all kinds of recent happenings, or else it can lose touch with the issues it is satirising. By staying relevant, it remains powerful, and through that, it allows us to examine the show through the context of
broadcasting to the nation and post-broadcast fragmentation. South Park can be easily examined through the sphere of broadcasting to the nation. Through its broadcast, it's opposing much of the tropes expected in broadcast to the nation. It often criticises the sense of identity created by mass media in the US. When the children main characters in South Park reflect on society's actions, they often use words like we, us, and our. This is one of the major tropes of national identity building through broadcast television. But it can also be viewed, like other forms of media, as some may say it is trying to enlighten its audiences on specifically what is wrong. It is possibly more suitable to look at it through the lens of post-broadcast fragmentation. We say this because it is clearly an example of disruptive TV. With all the controversies it has caused on various topics, it's safe to assume it's quite disruptive. It fragments the national audience by criticising and satirising so many different types of people. However, we believe this disruption and fragmentation is actually an effective way to bring society together. It can also make people realise that all sides of these contentious debates are not as serious as once thought, and it can allow them to self-reflect and self-criticise much easier. This in turn will lead to a much more tolerant and accepting society.
So the extract we'll be looking at for our shot analysis is from the season 16 episode Raising the Bar, which aired on October the 3rd, 2012. First, let's look at what happens in Raising the Bar.
So the theme of the episode is pretty much how society has become trashy and the bar has been lowered in terms of what is acceptable behaviour. It introduces this issue by showing fat people on mobility scooters driving around South Park. Cartman then decides to also get a mobility scooter. So one of his classmates decides to make a reality show about him that is similar to Honey Boo Boo. All while this is happening, James Cameron is on a deep-sea expedition to find the bar and physically raise it, and make society realise what is and what isn't acceptable behaviour.
Parker and Stone usually find a way to satirise many things in just one episode, but these are the three main things that they satirise in Raising the Bar. Obviously, the US is one of the most obese countries in the world, so they wanted to comment on that. 2012 was when Honey Boo Boo exploded onto screens all over the country, and the creators obviously took issue with the show. And earlier in 2012, James Cameron broke the world record for the deepest solo dive when he went 11 kilometres deep in the Mariana Trench. This was big news at the time, so naturally the creators found a way to weave it into the story. Okay, now is the time to play the extract. Thanks, Noni.
In terms of mise-en-scene, the scene begins with Carl storming into the office where Token is sitting at a desk, well above Carl's height. This difference in height represents the balance of power that is currently at play in the scene. Putting children in adult scenarios like this is a commonly used trope for South Park's humour. Token holds power over Carl, as he blindsided Carl into believing that the show they were making about Cartman would be more of a documentary exposing him, whereas Token makes it into a comedy show exploiting Cartman's obesity and the struggle he faces as a result of this. Carl is clearly upset, asking Token, how can he sit there and collect money on a show that's about a fat child killing himself? After Carl asks Token, where's your sense of shame? Token gets out of his chair and is now leveled with Carl. This change in character's positioning demonstrates how Token is trying to reason with Carl and explain why he made the show the way he did. The scene then shifts to show an eye-level shot of Token, staring out the window with Carl standing further behind him to the left. Token starts talking about watching Honey Boo Boo, then turns around from the window to face Carl, asking him, if they can feel okay making money off her, why can't I? This brings up issues surrounding what makes successful TV and the ethical implications of making such a show about an overweight child and essentially exploiting her for money, even though she's clearly not healthy. The scene then cuts between Carl and Token as they speak to each other, the camera angle focusing directly on each character when they talk. Carl tells him, when the bar gets lowered, Token, we all pay the price. This statement suggests that when the bar, what society deems acceptable in all aspects of life, is lowered, everybody suffers as a result, such as Honey Boo Boo, who was exploited by her mother and the show she's in, instead of receiving help for her declining health. Token responds saying, the bar is determined by society, Carl, a statement which implies that the declining quality of entertainment is a result of changing societal standards, and not the fault of creators of such entertainment, and therefore should not be blamed for adhering to society's changing standards.
We chose this extract because we believe it really reflects the desire the creators have to comment on society and also to highlight the show's ability to make people realise that maybe some things in their life are kind of stupid for a variety of reasons. It certainly opens up people's eyes on the behaviour they're endorsing and hopes that it may change their viewers' minds, reinforcing the immense power the show has. Here is our list of references. Thanks for watching.